Hi, my name's Hayley and welcome to my podcast. Throughout this podcast, I will be using the reflective autobiographical lens and the theoretical lens to explore some of my experiences studying primary health and physical education and how these have shaped my teaching pedagogy. But first, I think it's important to note why PDHP is such a valuable curriculum area through primary education. Engaging with the concept of physical literacy, the K-6 syllabus enables students to develop the knowledge, understanding, skills, values, and attitudes to engage in a lifelong commitment to living healthy, safe, and active lifestyles. Students learn the knowledge and understanding that underpin this lifestyle, developing resilience, empathy, and respectful relationships to promote inclusivity and social justice. They develop physical, cognitive, social, and emotional skills that ultimately shape their values and attitudes. These stand that students are informed, socially and culturally aware citizens, advocating for healthy, safe, and active lifestyles in a rapidly changing 21st century society. One concept that has greatly influenced my PDHPA pedagogy is the game sense approach. As explained by the Australian Sports Commission, game sense is an approach to modified sport that engages children in minor and modified game strategies and concepts where they are given opportunities to develop both skills and understandings of the tactics of the game. This inquiry-based and student-centered approach to physical education stems from the constructivist theory of learning. Richard Light defines constructivism as a complex learning process in which learners draw on their own experiences and existing knowledge to make sense of new learning experiences and actively construct their own understanding and meanings. In physical education, the constructivist approach is essential to learning due to the holistic means of including the body within the learning process, as opposed to just the mind. Peel and Griffin comment that the holistic feature of game sense on the whole person and on the game as a whole is linked to the reduction of breaking the game into independent technique and skill demands. The game sense approach can be classified into 4 categories, including invasion games, net or war games, striking or fielding games, and target games. Game sense offers many benefits within the PDHPE classroom, including improved decision-making, communication, and problem-solving skills, and increased motivation to learn. Ultimately, students practice and refine skills related to physical, intellectual, and social learning. However, I believe the biggest strength of the game sense learning approach is inclusivity. As explained by Light, Curry, and Mooney, the expectation to be inclusive in physical education is met in the game sense as all groups are included in all aspects of the lesson and their inclusion is both significant and equivalent. They suggest that modified games prevent individual domination, therefore emphasising group collaboration and inclusion in a supportive social environment. To modify games, the Australian Sports Commission designed the Change It framework. This framework focuses on the elements of coaching style, how you score or win, area, numbers, game rules, equipment, inclusion, and time. Educators can use this framework to modify games to maximise active participation and meet the needs of all players regardless of ability. A key feature of the game sense approach is using questioning to generate thinking. By asking prompt questions, educators can reach the desired answer without telling the students directly. Peel and Griffin state that the questioning over instruction and learning through dialogue and reflection on experiences are common to most game sense approaches. To prove how the game sense approach could be used in the PDHPE, I have identified stage 3 outcomes that are met through using the game sense. Firstly, through participating in game sense lessons, students would meet the outcome PD3-10 as they use interpersonal skills to interact respectfully with others and promote inclusion throughout teamwork games. This leads to the PDHPE content strain of health, well-being and relationships as students use personal strengths to build respectful peer relationships. Additionally, students would also meet the outcome PD3-11 as they manipulate, modify and perform movement skills and sequences to effectively meet the requirements of modified games, linking to the PDHPE content strain of movement, skill and performance. To further explore the game sense approach, I'll be personally reflecting on my experience with game sense during my week 3 practical tutorial, although I must note that I am an online student, therefore this practical tutorial was completed online. I believe this tutorial challenged my previous existing beliefs towards PDHPE teaching and learning. My lived body experiences during physical education often surrounded draw-based skills. The idea of draw-based learning was reiterated during my out-of-school sporting, whereby netball drills were a memory of every Wednesday night training session. Therefore, participating in this tutorial opened my eyes to the modern PDHPE pedagogy that is the game sense approach. First, I found it difficult to understand how students could participate in games without mastering the underpinning skills. Stolz and Pill challenge traditional PDHP methods of progression as an additive process, proposing that children can learn to play modified versions of games ahead of mastering the mature skills. When delving into the theory of game sense, as identified earlier, it is understandable how students participate in games before mastering the discrete skills. It was also interesting to learn that in this pedagogy, teachers are only facilitators of learning in PDHPE. Students explore and experiment with body movements and tactics, constructing their own knowledge and understanding of the game. With varying abilities within all classrooms, I often found it difficult to understand how a PDHPE classroom could always be 100% inclusive. However, during the tutorial, we were given an opportunity to modify invasion games using the Change It acronym. I found it impressive that the framework offered so many differentiations to modify games. The Australian Sports Commission comments that modifications are to make the game easier, harder, or include and challenge all players, maximising participation and meeting the needs of everyone. Through tutorial discussions, we learnt the benefits of modifying games in supporting an inclusive and supportive physical education environment without skill domination or peer conflict. Ultimately, by participating in this tutorial, I have developed professionally, becoming confident and inclusive of the game sense approach within my own teaching pedagogy. I was introduced to a high-quality resource called Playing for Life. The Playing for Life activity cards can be used by teachers to choose over 100 games in all sporting categories that generate safe, inclusive, and challenging environments. This is a resource I will bring with me into my teaching career. The following week, I participated in the next online practical tutorial, this time focusing on athletics. Reflecting on my lived body experiences through primary PDHPE, I often disliked athletics due to the nature of the sport being individual. However, participating in this tutorial extended our knowledge on the game sense approach towards implementing in group athletics activities. Little Athletics Australia designed a school program labelled Great Ideas for Group Games. The company acknowledged that traditional athletic skills teaching is often associated with short bursts of activities and long waiting periods, ultimately boring students. Therefore, they created a collection of games used for warm-up activities or event skill training. They state that some of the games have been designed to interject an element of fun into an otherwise boring and repetitive activity. Griggs and Randall emphasise that athletics has remained a neglected area of primary physical education and the greatest attention must be turned towards planning for athletics integrated play. Therefore, using this framework in the tutorial, we planned our own Stage 2 athletics lesson inclusive of the sequential game sense activities. Stolz and Pill explain that in Game Sense approach, players progress through a sequential series of modified games, growing in complexity as they master the objectives of each game form. In creating an athletics lesson plan, I learned how educators could design and organise activities with game elements to initiate skills practice. In addition, I have also found myself becoming more confident and teach athletics within the primary education classroom. Engaging in the tutorial activities, I learned the main teaching points and common mistakes for a variety of athletic skills, including shot put, javelin, discus, hurdles, and a relay baton exchange. Ultimately, this tutorial challenged my previous thoughts towards athletics, but simultaneously supported my newly found beliefs on game sense pedagogy. I believe this tutorial has enabled me to develop professionally as a confident PDHP educator delivering athletics content. Now I'm going to reflect on my first theory tutorial in week 1 of primary health and physical education. This introductory tutorial included discussion-based activities that challenged our previous thinking and experience towards physical education. To begin, I think one key aspect of this lecture that allowed me to develop professionally is learning differences between terminology. I closely related sport and PDHP to one another, which are entirely separate from each other. We delved into the PDHP syllabus to understand how physical education differs from sports. We learnt the 5 propositions of the K-6 PDHP syllabus, including value movement, developing health literacy, including a critical inquiry approach, focusing on educative purposes, and taking a strength-based approach. These propositions are organised and taught under 3 content strands of health, well-being and relationships, movement, skill and performance, and healthy, safe and active lifestyles. During discussions, I found it interesting that some educators still today use sport as a reward or punishment, as for many primary students, this may be their favourite subject. When personally reflecting on this question, I remember similar experiences when I was in primary school. Now discussing this concept as a teacher, I find it irrational. PDHP is a mandatory curriculum area and students are entitled to learn the content regardless of behavioural rewards or punishments. Melissa Coronet explains the positive impact physical education has on growing bodies and minds, and the concept of taking it away seems both counterintuitive and counterproductive. Through the tutorial activity of agree or disagree, many of my existing beliefs towards PDHP were challenged. We were asked whether we believe in a very crowded curriculum, and it's understandable that PDHPE is often left out. This discussion extended to ask whether some curriculum subjects were more important than others. Initially, I thought yes. I thought that maths and English are the most important subjects and, if necessary, should take priority over other subjects because they teach students the skills necessary to participate in society. However, this was a very close-minded viewpoint, and through discussion, my thoughts were soon challenged. Physical education also provides the skills students need to participate in society, inclusive of developing self-management skills and interpersonal skills. Additionally, Melissa Corrin also expresses that with such a crowded curriculum, physical activity breaks have been proven to improve on-task behaviour during academic instruction. Growing professionally, I now understand the importance of the PDHPE in the curriculum and always will make time for it. I have also formed a willingness to remain open-minded, appreciating others' viewpoints or perspectives and potentially altering my own. In week 6, I participated in an online theory tutorial focusing on body education. This was a controversial tutorial with lots of deep discussion on varying concepts. I did find that this tutorial challenged my previous thoughts and beliefs on body education and developed my teaching pedagogy. To begin, I learned that the content was labelled as sexuality education, as opposed to the common misconception that I also labelled as sex education. Sexuality education in the K-6 syllabus is concerned with the emotional, social, and physical aspects of growing up, identity, gender, human sexuality, and respect for relationships, including consent. Through tutorial discussions, we explored the controversial topic of sexuality education. In particular, the questions, should parents be able to opt out of sexuality education, and what age should children learn sexuality education? Initially, I supported that all students should participate from early stage 1. I believe it is essential, not just because it is a mandatory learning content, but additionally because students learn how to keep themselves safe regarding the child protection policy. Child protection engaged students in learning about respectful relationships, how to protect themselves from abuse, appropriate and inappropriate touching, and who they can trust and report to. However, my beliefs towards participation in sexuality education were challenged through the discussion. I learned that students with trauma backgrounds may potentially be triggered by the content, or that this specific content may not align with certain cultural and religious beliefs, or at certain ages. This has enabled me to broaden my understanding of why parents or carers opt out of sexuality education. However, it remains that teachers have a role in delivering all mandatory content, including sexuality education. Positively, Moran and Van Lent comment on a study by Robinson, Smith and Davies stating that 82.9% of parents reported that they believe sexuality education should start in primary school. Through participating in this tutorial, my beliefs of what my role as an educator is have been supported. Schools are neutral places where students should feel safe to express their viewpoints without judgment. I understand that my decisions as a teacher impact the lives of my students in both foreseen and unforeseen ways. Therefore, it is my responsibility to facilitate this environment and be objective by not delivering any biased material or content. I must deliver reliable and age-appropriate materials relevant to the curriculum and align with the New South Wales Department of Education values. This role extends to my duty of care, making professional judgments where necessary in sexuality education and potentially reporting child protection matters. Ultimately, this tutorial has enabled me to grow professionally and become confident in teaching sexuality education in the primary classroom, a topic I was once unconfident in teaching. I can conclude that in participating in the unit Primary Health and Physical Education, I have had a positive experience that has shaped my teaching pedagogy. I have learnt the importance of using correct subject-specific terminology and avoiding common misconceptions. Additionally, I have grown professionally learning the importance of physical education. I have learnt the knowledge, understanding, skills, values and attitudes that underpin the syllabus and ultimately support the development of students to becoming informed citizens advocating for healthy, safe and active lifestyles in a rapidly changing society. I think the most important thing I have learnt throughout the semester is the importance of inclusive PDHPE. To facilitate inclusive physical education, we practice and refine the use of game sense approach in real-life scenarios. As suggested by Pill and Griffin, locating learning and modified games to suit the abilities and dispositions of all learners makes learning relevant and significant to the students. I do believe the lecture and tutorial activities were highly linked to the subject content learnt during the unit. For instance, when learning the key theory of the game sense approach, all activities were sequentially constructed to build upon our prior knowledge. We learnt the theory behind the game sense approach before putting our knowledge to practice when constructing learning sequences. We were also provided with multiple high-quality resources for a range of content material that I will be adopting in my own teaching career. These included the Playing for Life cards and the Little Athletics program for school group games. Ultimately, I believe the content delivered in this unit has shaped my teaching pedagogy and additionally my self-confidence. A study by Ninjik and Kari identified data showing that pre-service teachers usually lack confidence in teaching physical education. They comment that this is due to most physical education initial teaching programs only delivering 10 hours of content. However, participating in the Western Sydney University Primary Health and Physical Education Unit, I have completed over double this average figure between lectures, tutorials and assignments. Therefore, I do feel confident in navigating the syllabus and constructing engaging learning sequences that will promote inclusivity. I aim to adopt the game sense approach into my teaching pedagogy and influence a positive lifelong commitment to physical education, not only for my students, but for me, myself as well. I have thoroughly enjoyed participating in this study of the subject and will adopt a wholeheartedness commitment to seek every opportunity to continue learning and improve my teaching practice. Thank you for listening to my podcast.